Well, welcome back, friends, to this intimacy series. I hope that you all have been enjoying these episodes. We are in our third installment of the intimacy series, and I'm so excited for what we're going to talk about today because I've been throwing around this word intimacy. We've been talking about it, right? We've been doing other episodes on it, and you might be thinking, but Dana, what is intimacy? Like, for real, for real. What is intimacy? And so, in this episode, we are going to talk about 5 types of intimacy. And of course, before I tell you all the 5 types, we're going to dive even deeper into this beautiful word. You all, I think that in relationships, we do ourselves a huge disservice when we just settle for connection only. And I'm going to talk about connection. I talk about connection all the time. Connection is great. Chemistry is great, as you heard a few episodes ago. But even more than connection, even more than chemistry, intimacy awaits. There are so many marriages that are devoid of intimacy, and it's not because they're not having sex, which you're going to hear in just a moment. Sex is not intimacy, and it's not even because they don't like each other. It's because they do not understand the depth, the gravitas of what intimacy is. So I'm asking each guest that comes on in this podcast series, the intimacy series, I'm asking them, what is your definition of intimacy? Because we can all define it in different ways. So I'm going to give you my definition, and I hope that this will become your definition. Quite simply, I believe that intimacy is being fully known and knowing fully. So it's not just you knowing someone else fully, but it's you also being fully known. And I'm going to talk to you about this beautiful Hebrew word called gnosko. Gnosko, Ginosko, I believe is how you spell it. So gnosko is a Hebrew word that describes not only a man's relationship to a woman, but also God's relationship to his people. If you read the King James Version of the Bible, you're going to see in all the genealogies that it'll be like Adam knew his wife and she beget a son. That basically means that Adam and Eve had sexual relations and they had a child. And it goes on through all of these different people who knew their wife and something was conceived out of that knowing. I think that is so critical for us to understand. Intimacy is not just something that we do to feel good about ourselves or to feel good about our marriages, but intimacy produces something. It produces something in your marriage, and it produces something in the lives of other people that are watching you. My goal, my desire is that when you and when other people look at my marriage, that you see the fruit of intimacy that Sean and I have worked to build. So let's get back to this Greek word, or this Hebrew word. I'm sorry, I keep calling it Greek. Hebrew, Dana, Hebrew. This Hebrew word, gnosko. I want to read to you a passage of scripture in Genesis chapter 2. Now, this is where we get this whole theme of intimacy from. Intimacy is really God's idea. And I don't know about you, but that makes me excited. Because if this is something that we're just drumming up on our own, if this is just something that we have to work toward, then we're going to be lost. But if we can go back to the root of where intimacy originated, it's exciting because this is how our marriages were always designed to be. So in Genesis chapter 2:25, this is the whole creation account. God has created Adam and Eve. He's created the animals, the plants, the stars, all the things, right, at this point. And so in Genesis chapter 20, in Genesis 2:25, it says, now the man and his wife were both naked, but they felt no shame. You may have heard the term or the phrase naked and unashamed. This is where we get that from. Adam and Eve were fully naked, like physically naked. They had no clothes at this point, but not only were they physically vulnerable to each other like that, but I believe that in every area of their relationship, they were vulnerable, they were open, and they felt no shame. Wouldn't you love to be in a marriage where you could be completely open, where you could be completely yourself, where you could be fully known and you could know fully and you feel no shame and your spouse feels no shame? Wouldn't you love that? So I believe that this template is available for anyone who wants it. So let's talk a little bit about what it means to be fully open, to be vulnerable, right? Like that word vulnerability has gotten a lot of play in our culture as of late, but what does it mean? Does it mean crying to each other? Does it mean sharing your deepest, darkest secrets? Yes and yes, but it also means just being fully seen. I'm not holding a wall between me and you. I'm not putting up a mask of who I really am, of what my true thoughts are, my true feelings are. I'm not doing any of that. I'm coming to you bare. I'm coming to you naked, if you will. And I'm allowing you to see who I really am. This is why you cannot have vulnerability if you do not have honesty. You can't say, well, I'm just being vulnerable, and then you put a mask up. Like that doesn't work. So when you are in a relationship, especially a marriage, and you want to be vulnerable, it takes some trust. You can't have vulnerability without trust, right? Because the truth is, you can try to be vulnerable with people, but if you don't trust them, if you don't trust them with your heart, if you don't trust that they're going to care for what you're about to give to them, then you're not going to open up fully. You might open up a little bit. And that's what's going on in a lot of marriages. They're opening up a little bit. It's like, yeah, you can see me up to a point. But my desire for you and for my own marriage is that we are fully open. We are fully naked and unashamed. I'm not ashamed of who I am. I'm not ashamed of my past. My past is my past. It's made me who I am today. I'm not ashamed of the way that I think, the way that I believe. I'm not ashamed of my feelings. So if I cry and that upsets you, sorry, this is me. If I don't cry and that upsets you, sorry, this is me. This is what we're working towards, friends. How to be naked and unashamed. Okay, so remember that the working definition that we're using for intimacy is being fully known and knowing fully. Or you can switch the reverse order if you want. It's knowing fully and being fully known, whatever floats your boat. You're going to hear me talk a lot about some very key words. You're going to hear me talk a lot about connection. You're going to hear me talk a lot about understanding. You're going to hear me talk a lot about vulnerability. So if vulnerability makes you nervous, you might struggle with intimacy. Okay. So just remember, we are talking about how to be fully known. And then how do we fully know our partner? This is why you got to be so careful about who you marry, because you're going to know every single thing about this person. And some of y'all are like, Lord Jesus, if I would have known, right? If I would have known all the things about this person, I would never would have married him or her. This is why you got to make sure that you're doing your premarital counseling, because in premarital, a lot of these conversations are unlocked. Now, you're not going to know everything about your spouse until you actually marry them. And we're going to talk about why in a moment, because that experience isn't there yet. But you can at least do your part. You can do your best to make sure that you're not entering into these marriages blindly. If you haven't already heard about the intimacy series guide that I'm offering you for free 99, I want to make sure that you get that, okay? This is going to be such a beautiful complement to these podcast episodes. So in the free intimacy series guide, you're going to find things like self-checks, assessments. You're going to find other practical tips on how to improve the intimacy in your marriage. So make sure that you go to danashay.com/intimacy series to get that. All right, you guys, are y'all ready to jump into these 5 intimacy types? Now, I have talked about this before on the episode. If you're a podcast episode, Rebuilding Us OG, then you've probably heard me talk about this before. I talk about intimacy a lot, so this is not going to be new information for many of you. But if you're newer to the podcast, or maybe you've never really done any work on intimacy, this is going to be new information for you. So you're going to learn a lot. And not only do I want you to learn, but I want you to then, of course, implement this into your relationships. Okay. So we're going to start off these 5 intimacy types by talking about what I believe is the most important type of intimacy, and that is spiritual intimacy. Now, some of you might be listening thinking, oh, I'm not religious. We don't go to church. I don't really get into all the spiritual stuff. Friend, you are body, soul, and spirit, whether you realize that or not. You don't have to go to church to be spiritual. You don't have to have a denomination to be spiritual. God created you with a spirit. Your body is not all that you are. You are trichotomous, if I can use that word. You are 3 parts. You are body, soul, spirit. So when you are in a relationship with someone, I believe the highest form of intimacy is not just when you connect on the bodily form, which is physical intimacy. It's not even just when you connect on the soulish form, which is emotional intimacy, but it's when you connect spirit to spirit. That's spiritual intimacy. And that's what we're talking about. So, spiritual intimacy is this deep connection that you have with someone based on shared values, shared spiritual beliefs, yes, shared religious beliefs, a shared worldview, how you see the world. This is spiritual intimacy. Now, let me tell you that being a Christian, like I'm a Christian, right? But being a Christian does not guarantee that you are going to have spiritual connection if you marry another Christian. Let me say that again. A lot of people think, oh, I'm a Christian, so I need to marry another Christian and we're going to have spiritual intimacy. Not so, my friends. Not so. Because even the word Christian means different things to different people. Some people look at the word Christian and they think, okay, being a Christian is maybe I grew up in church or I go to church, or maybe I believe in God, I believe in Jesus. Other people believe that being a Christian means that I have a personal walk with Jesus. I know him, he knows me, that intimacy word, same word, right? So the word Christianity has been so butchered. And I mean, my goodness, we don't even have time in this podcast episode to get into all the reasons why. Like, hey, I'm a Christian and I could take the blame for some of that, okay? But what I'm trying to explain is as you develop spiritual intimacy, it's more than just where you go to church. It's more than the sermons that you listen to. It's more than if you believe in God or you don't, or you believe God is like this or you don't. So spiritual intimacy is when the two of you decide we are going to connect. Again, there's that word. We're going to connect based on our shared values, our shared beliefs. Can you have spiritual intimacy if you don't believe everything the same? Yes. Sean and I are an example of this. So both Sean and I are Christians, right? We were both born again. We both have a relationship with Jesus, but we see things from a very different perspective on some matters. Now, like on the main things, we're pretty connected there. But there are different expressions of our faith that differ wildly. And to be honest, you guys, that used to trip us up in the beginning of our relationship, and even in the middle of our relationship, up until like 5 years ago, maybe, because I thought that if we're going to be spiritually connected, we need to see all of these things the same way. What do you mean you don't believe in the manifestation of the Holy Spirit or whatever it might be, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is you do not have to believe every single thing that your partner, your spouse believes, but you do need to be working toward a connection on these deeply held values, these deeply held beliefs. So one of the things that I want to encourage you all to do to grow your spiritual intimacy is to talk about spiritual matters together. And do this with the intent to understand. You've heard me say many times that communications, the goal of communication is not agreement, but understanding. Can you have a relationship without understanding? No. And you can't have great communication without listening to understand. So when you're having these conversations, your goal is not to evangelize your spouse. Your goal is not to make them believe all the things that you believe. Your goal is to find out what they believe and why, and to ask questions and to get really curious and to approach those conversations with no judgment. Okay, that is spiritual intimacy. So before we get into the other four areas of spiritual intimacy, let me go a little bit deeper into the word intimacy. As you know, our working definition for intimacy is being fully known and knowing fully. But I also want to kind of contrast that word know. Right. I often give this example of I used to say Kobe Bryant, but God rest his soul. So I'm going to have to use LeBron James. All right. Let's say LeBron James. I'm not a huge LeBron James fan. Sorry, you guys. I'm not. But let's say, you know what? Let's not use LeBron James because no offense to LeBron, but I'm just not a fan. Okay. Let's use Mariah Carey. I love Mariah Carey. Y'all, I love Mariah Carey so much that when I was in college, Sean and I were planning our wedding. I got married at 18. Y'all know that, right? So when this is so embarrassing. When I was planning our wedding, I literally sent Mariah Carey's fan club an email to ask if she would sing at my wedding. And I fully expected her to say yes. Like, I didn't understand why I never got a reply back. Like, I was like, oh, well, maybe my email got lost. Like, I was confused because I love her so much. I love her so much. So I love me some Mariah Carey, right? Like I just love her. So I don't know Mariah Carey. Like I know a lot of facts about her. I know her mother's name, I know her sister's name. I know that her mother and her sister died on the same day. Like I know that her father, his name is Alfred Roy. Like I know all of these things about this woman, okay? I'm not a stalker. I promise. I've just followed her for years and years and years, and I just love her. I love her music, especially like her older music, not like the newer raunchy stuff, but like the older music, the old Mariah Carey. Love, love, love. But I don't know Mariah. If Mariah were to see me in a store, she would not know me from Adam. She does not know me. We do not have an intimate relationship, right? So that is what a lot of people think. Oh, I know this person because you feel like you've had an experience with this person, this experiential knowledge, but it's not real intimacy. You know, you can have that in your marriage. You can know lots of things about your spouse. You can know about their family. You can talk to their family. You can know about how they grew up. You can know their characteristics. You can see their characteristic traits, but you don't fully know them and they don't fully know you. So that's experiential knowledge. That is not what we're talking about here. Intimacy is also not relational knowledge. It's not, I know I've got a cousin, right? Me and my cousin, we've got a relationship, but maybe I haven't talked to my cousin in 6 years. Do we have an intimate relationship? No, because we don't have a deep relationship. So it's not just the title of someone in your life. This is my husband. This is my wife. This is my son. This is my daughter. The title does not guarantee that you have an intimate relationship. Okay. And then thirdly, this progressive knowing. So a lot of people feel like, especially in the dating world, right? Like I'm getting to know this person. And maybe you've even been sexually intimate with this person. And so you feel like I know them. We have intimacy, but it's really just progressive understanding. You're getting to know them, right? And don't have sex before marriage, FYI, but you're getting to know them, but you don't really have intimacy. So, when I'm talking about intimacy, I want you to just be thinking about these ways that you know different people in your life. And I want to make sure that you don't confuse knowing with intimacy. Okay, we good there? All right, cool. So let's get back into the other types. So we talked about spiritual intimacy. I believe it's huge. I believe it's important. I believe if you want to start somewhere in your marriage, maybe you're thinking, Dana, we have no intimacy in any forms. Where should we start? I would encourage you to start here. Why? Because I believe that when you develop that spiritual intimacy, because remember, it's the highest form of intimacy, spirit to spirit, when you develop that, then all the other forms kind of get in line. So the next area of intimacy that we're going to talk about is most women's favorite, which is emotional intimacy. Right. And like we generalize, like, because men are not emotional, women are emotional. That's not true. Obviously, you're going to have some spouses who they're reverse, where the husband might be more emotional than the wife. But the whole purpose of emotional intimacy is really building a deep connection, right? Again, connection, connection, connection. It's building a deep connection between two people based on what? Well, it's based on shared vulnerability, based on shared trust, and based on shared understanding. Emotional intimacy has nothing to do with tears. It has nothing to do with whether you feel like you are an emotional person, which is so funny when people are like, I'm not an emotional person. Everyone's an emotional person. Everybody has emotions. Everybody. So when you are developing emotional intimacy, you are saying, I trust you with my feelings. I trust you with my heart. I'm going to be vulnerable and I'm going to open up to you about how I feel, about the things that really concern me in life. That's emotional intimacy. And every marriage needs it. Emotional intimacy, I believe, then helps you with this next form of intimacy, which is everybody's favorite, physical intimacy, right? I'm saying like play on words. Like some people are like, yeah, I don't need it. I was talking to a woman not too long ago, and she wasn't a client. She was just a woman that I know. And so she told me, she was like, she and her husband have not had sex in 10 years. And I was like, oh, wow. 10 years is a long time. That would absolutely be considered a sexless marriage. And if you haven't listened to my podcast episodes on sexless marriages, I'll be sure to link that in the show notes of this podcast. But 10 years is just a long time. I mean, 10 months is a long time. But she said to me, she said, neither of us really care about that. And I was like, oh, Okay. She wasn't asking for my advice, so I didn't give it. But I was just like, that's interesting. But I believe that physical intimacy is very important in a relationship. And let me just tell you that physical intimacy is not sexual intimacy. You know that you can have physical intimacy with your child. Physical intimacy is a deep connection between two people based on touch and affection. It does not have to be sexual touch. Non sexual touch, like long hugs, like rubbing the back, like caressing, all of those things can be physical intimacy. Now, of course, you don't want to be caressing people that you're not married to. But what I'm trying to explain to you is that when people confuse sexual intimacy with physical intimacy, you're missing out because there are other things that you can do other than sexual intercourse. There are going to be times in a marriage where you aren't going to be able to have sex. Like if someone is sick, if someone is away on a deployment, things like that, you can't have sex, right? If you're sick, that doesn't mean that the physical intimacy just goes out of the window. Can you hold hands? Like, my goodness, like wash your hands if you're afraid of being contagious, but you can still touch. You can still massage the shoulders. You can still rub each other's feet in bed at night. Like, there are things that you can still do that will foster that connection. There is something about physical touch that's so powerful. There is a stat, I don't remember who the originator of the stat was, but it basically says that when a baby is born, if they do not have touch with their mother within the first 24 hours, they begin to languish emotionally. If you are in a relationship and you never touch, your marriage is going to languish. I am a very touchy feely person for everybody. Like, I have to apologize to my friends sometimes. I love touching people. As a matter of fact, we were on this, we went to a conference, me and when I was working at the church, me and one of the other pastors, she's a female, not a male. We shared a room, and I had to tell her, I was like, listen, I'm very touchy, okay? And I'm also a very deep sleeper. So if I caress you in the middle of the night, I promise you, I'm not sexually attracted to you. Just kick me and push me off the bed because I think you're Sean. That's what's happening in my sleep is I think you're Sean. And so she was like, how about I put some pillows in between us so we can make sure that you stay on your side? I'm just a touchy person. I love touching. And that's great. Physical touch is a part of physical intimacy. Sex is a part of physical intimacy, but again, sex is not physical intimacy. You can have physical intimacy without sex. Now, does that mean that I'm giving you an excuse to not have sex? No, you need to have sex if you're married, but I want to take the pressure off a little bit because if you feel like, oh my gosh, we're not physically intimate, we have to have sex tonight, well, then you might not do it. But can you start with sitting on your spouse's lap? Can you start with holding them for a little bit longer than just your quick goodbye hug? Can you start with a kiss? Can you start with something that isn't sexual? So make sure that you are not neglecting your physical intimacy because it's important. It is the only relationship. Listen to me carefully here. Marriage is the only relationship I'm talking about per God, right? The biblical order. Marriage is the only relationship where you can express physical, sexual intimacy. All the other forms of intimacy, spiritual intimacy, emotional intimacy, and the other two that I'm going to tell you can be expressed outside of your marriage, but not sexual intimacy. So don't neglect it. It's important. Okay. Number 4, intellectual intimacy. Some of you have never heard of this before. Intellectual intimacy is probably one of the most neglected, maybe the most neglected forms of intimacy. What do I mean by intellectual intimacy? Well, again, we're talking about connection. So intellectual intimacy is a deep connection, and it is based on sharing ideas, thoughts, beliefs, perspectives with someone else. I love this whole idea of intellectual intimacy. It's something that Sean and I are actively working on. This is probably our lowest. I am a book nerd. I love reading. Like books, they make me so happy. Like I remember, Barnes and Noble is still around, but there's a lot of bookstores that are going out of business, right? But I remember being a kid. I was telling one of my friends this other day. I remember, and I was cool, y'all. I was not a nerd. Like people didn't talk to me. Like I had friends, okay. But I would ask my mom to drop me off at the library, and I could stay in the library for hours. I love the smell of books. I love the feel of them. I love the touch of the paper. I love seeing which books had cream colored paper, beige colored paper, white paper. I love books. Sean does not. So when we got married, I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to read all these marriage books together. It's going to be great. And he was like, I don't read. And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean you don't read? I don't understand. And I was so upset. Like, literally, I was so upset because he does not love to read. So, through the 26 years that we've been married, I have forced him to read books. Yes, I have, because we are going to connect intellectually. Now, do you have to read books? No. You can listen to podcasts like this one. I want you to listen to this podcast with your spouse or other podcasts. You can find out what is something that you want to learn together. So this is something that Sean and I are doing together right now. I asked him, I said, what is one thing that we can both learn about together? Something that we maybe don't know a lot about, that we can both kind of be learners. Because sometimes intellectual intimacy is hard when one spouse feels like, well, my spouse already knows all the things about this particular topic, and then they feel insecure, right? So it's like, okay, Sean, I don't know a ton about stocks, and I want to learn more about it. I want to learn more about the stock market and how it works and how our money is working and all the things, right? Because right now we just like put our money away and just hope for the best, right? We've got it in stocks and all of that, and we're just hoping that these people are doing what they're supposed to do with our money. But I want to learn more. And so Sean was like, oh, me too. All right, great. So that's something that we can learn. Now, for me, that's going to involve reading books, probably watching YouTube University, right? Listening to podcasts. For him, he's probably going to ask me what I learned. And that's okay if that's where we start. The goal is that you want to be learning something together. You want to be stimulating your intellect. Why? Because we are body, mind, soul, and spirit, right? Your mind is a part of your soul, but we need to connect on that level. So don't neglect intellectual intimacy. Maybe you're like, I don't really need to learn. I went to college and I'm done. I believe that we are always supposed to be learning. Be a lifelong learner. Never stop learning. All right, finally, friends, we're here at the end. Recreational intimacy. This is our last form. Recreational intimacy is so fun because this is a deep connection between two people based on sharing fun and leisure activities. Don't you just want to go to a theme park together sometimes? Don't you just want to go to the movies sometimes? Don't you just want to go to Top Golf sometimes? Don't you just want to go have fun sometimes? Sometimes, you guys, we look at marriage and it's like, it's so much work and it's so hard. And yes, marriage does take work, but you should also be having fun. You should be laughing together. That's one thing I love about Sean. He's silly. Like, I'm silly. Some people think I'm so intense. I'm so silly, you all. I love to laugh. Humor is literally one of my love languages. Like, you cannot be my friend if you're not funny. I'm sorry. You just cannot. You don't have to be a comedian, but if you're like so serious and you take yourself so seriously, you take the world so seriously, we're just not going to get along. So I love that about Sean because he does not take himself seriously. And when he does, I make sure to bring him down a few notches. Recreational intimacy is important because it keeps your marriage fresh. It keeps it fun. It keeps it alive. It keeps you wanting to go on date night. Like sometimes I look at couples and they're out to dinner and they look miserable together. And I'm like, you guys, this is supposed to be fun. And listen, date nights does not have to be about dinner all the time. I tell Sean that all the time. I'm like, listen, buddy, we don't have to keep going out to dinner. Like food is fine. We need to eat food, great. But like, what else can we do? Let's do some fun things. Let's go to a candle making class. Let's go to putt-putt golf. Let's go run on the beach. Y'all know I can't run, so this is going to be funny, okay? So what I'm saying to you is have fun in your marriage. Keep it spicy with the sexual intimacy, yeah, but keep it sweet with the recreational intimacy, with just the fun. You can find cheap activities to do. You don't have to go all out and go to an island to have fun. I mean, God bless you if you go to the islands, but you can have fun right where you are, right in your hometown. Find something to do fun. Can we do that this week? Can I give you 2 areas of homework from this podcast episode? 1, I want you to work on your spiritual intimacy. Have a conversation with your spouse. Ask them, what does spiritual intimacy look like to you? And how can we improve that in our marriage? That's it. The second thing I want you to do is do something fun together this week. Do something fun. All right. Well, you've got all the 5 forms of intimacy. There's spiritual intimacy, emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, recreational intimacy, and intellectual intimacy. I want you to focus on one area. I've already given you my advice. I think you need to start with spiritual intimacy, but maybe you're doing great with the spiritual intimacy. Choose another form and work toward building that together. All right, my friends. Well, thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to like this video and comment. I would love to hear your thoughts on what I've shared in this video. So be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. I will see you on the next video. Take care.